As she indulges herself with pleasure from submission, a woman's life changes when her boyfriend introduces her to his attractive older brother, who happens to be her perfect master. One night, René and his friend take his lover, U, to an unknown and secluded location to test her obedience and train her submissiveness. While on their way, René bounds her hands, blindfolds her, and removes her undergarments using a pocket knife. Despite the shamefulness of the act, U remains subservient. Upon arriving at their destination, the pair escort her inside a castle-like mansion. Two women, Jean and André, help her get ready for her welcoming ceremony later. Once done, they lead U to a room where numerous men, including René, await her. Now that she is the center of everyone's attention, one of the masters named Eric asks René if U has experienced being restrained and whipped during lovemaking, but he denies it. Because of his answer, the masters proceed to have their way with her, and U willingly receives their twisted affection. After the deed, René gently caresses U's lips to check on her, but the noise from Jean's activity distracts her. Jean prepares the statue where U will be chained up, and Master Juan explains that it'll be the place where she'll be whipped while blindfolded. When U stares directly into his eyes, the man calls her action proud, so he announces that she must be chained immediately. As soon as she's chained, Master Juan begins to whip her aggressively, making U cry in pain. Moments later, U tiredly lies on a sofa, and René gives her an ice-cold water to rehydrate her. U quickly downs it and tells René she's endured the punishments earlier just for him. In recognition for her actions, René kisses her forehead. U tries to get up, but Master Juan stops her and presents a new attire she'll don tomorrow. As Jean showcases the practicality of the dress for their activities, Master Juan proudly informs U that it's designed to make her available to any man who wishes to bed her. Then, he reminds her that her stay in their mansion is voluntary, so he asks her if she wants to leave. Though slightly apprehensive, U denies leaving, urging Master Juan to enumerate their rules. Afterward, Jean and André escort U to her room, but while they descend the stairs, they tell her about her servant, Pierre. According to Jean, Pierre will bind and whip her at night. André adds that he's also free to bed her but warns her not to look him in the eyes. Before U can ask for clarification, Pierre appears, causing her to look down. André and Jean also avoid his gaze and lead U to her room. Once inside, the pair assists U in bathing and gets acquainted with her. Then, they help her get settled in her bed and leave. Suddenly, Pierre appears, and U immediately looks down. Pierre greets her, but she doesn't reciprocate, so he simply accomplishes his task by chaining her. When he's done, Pierre tucks her to bed, making her contemplate why she perceives terror as sweet. Later that evening, Pierre abruptly visits U and awakens her from a deep slumber. He chains her to one of the room's columns and begins to whip her. The next morning, André and Jean assist U in having her breakfast. Jean applies balm on her marks, whereas André prepares her tea. When André tries to converse with U, Jean intervenes, reminding them they're forbidden to speak. As the pair take their leave, René and Master Four enter her room. René lovingly hugs her but quickly orders her to prepare herself as he and Master Four will share her. Following their shared intimacy, René reminds U about their rules. She mustn't look into the men's eyes nor speak to them. He adds that the rule applies to him, so she must be careful not to deviate. Before going, René professes his love for her but orders her to pronounce a man's name, which is why he brought her into the mansion. René promises to introduce him to her someday and begins to whisper his name in her ear. Upon hearing it, U gladly complies and utters Sir Stephen. Shortly after, Jean, alongside a male servant, accompanies U to her chamber. On their way, Jean breaks the rule of not mentioning the mansion's cloister. The servant hears her words. Therefore, she profusely apologizes to him. Regardless of her apology, the man doesn't relent and harshly drags her to give her a punishment. In U's quarters, René informs her of his departure in a few days. He promises to come back and fetch her afterward. Though saddened by this, U has no choice but to allow him. The following morning, the servants guard the women while they eat. One of them is interested in U but is saddened by her nonchalance. Pierre believes she'll eventually glance at them and expresses his adoration of her. For him, he loves her proud personality. Pierre tries to trick U by flicking a rock at her, hoping she'll look him in the eyes. However, his plan fails as U simply swats it away and resumes eating. Still determined, Pierre pours her a drink, but U remains focused on her food. Left with no option, Pierre kisses her, but the woman maintains her compliance with the rules. Despite her elusive front, U likes Pierre as she perceives him as an extension of René's ownership of her. After assisting U in her bath, Pierre guides the blindfolded woman in the corridors. He is unable to contain his desire for her, so he pushes her into a corner and makes love to her. On the remaining days of her stay, U endures getting whipped and used as the master's medium of release. She surrenders to their desires to fulfill her obedience to her lover. When the time of her departure arrives, René greets her with a kiss and orders her to get dressed. In the middle of prepping up, Master One and Jean enter her quarters. The pair shows her a ring, and Master One orders her to wear it. As she dons the ring, Jean bids her farewell and leaves. On their way home, Wu notices a sign indicating the mansion is in Wasi. Back in their apartment, René wants to reinforce his dominance over his lover, for he takes pleasure from it. He instructs her on how she should listen to him, and Wu eagerly complies. Then, he orders her to sort out her things, another way for him to test Wu's obedience. The next day, Wu receives a phone call from René where he inquires her about her current outfit. She discloses that she's still wearing her nightgown, so René orders her to disrobe. Without hesitation, she complies. René commands her to keep her appearance until he returns home. Afterward, he reminds her about sorting her things and emphasizes only packing clothes that can't be easily removed. Later on, René comes home and is satisfied to see that Wu has followed all of his instructions, further establishing his ownership over her. At Wu's workplace as a fashion photographer, she intently stares at Jacqueline's photograph, her new model. She's truly interested in her that she printed about 50 photos of her, something she'd never done before. Even at home, Wu appraises the model's charming photographs. However, René's sudden arrival breaks her daydream, causing her to hide them hurriedly. Upon greeting him, René informs her that they'll leave in an hour, so she must prepare. René tries to order her to wear her black dress and fur, but the woman is distracted due to her eagerness to be intimate. When René mentions her dress, she opines that it's old. René thinks it suits her well, so he begs her to wear it, making her agree eventually. Later that evening, René introduces her to the enigmatic Sir Stephen. The man immediately fancies Wu, leading him to compliment her appearance. He takes the honor of ordering drinks for her and orders her to sit. Once seated, René tells her they can dine in the cellar, but Sir Stephen intervenes, inviting them to have coffee at his house. Inside his house, the man reveals that he is René's stepbrother. Since they're brothers, he emphasizes that they've always shared everything, making him broach about her ring. Sir Stephen clarifies that it signifies his ownership of her and expresses his seriousness about their arrangement. Now that Sir Stephen has explained it, René asks Wu if she wants to accept the arrangement as he'll reveal his brother's preferences to her. Wu accepts and confidently states that Sir Stephen is her master. However, René disagrees and enlightens her that they are her owners. Sir Stephen steps forward and urges her to consent to becoming their shared property. Despite being shared, he tells her she'll only have one master as he's demanding when it comes to intimacy. After a few seconds of consideration, Wu accepts but asks him if he'll whip her, and he confirms. René helps her kneel so they can inspect her bottom. Admittingly, Wu feels ashamed of their caresses, but she can't deny the pleasure she gets from it. Shortly after, Sir Stephen begins their session by pleasuring her. Since Wu quickly reacts to his touches, he abruptly stops and calls her an easy girl. He asks her if René knows about her liking other men who desire her and even accuses her of using obedience as an alibi. When Wu denies it, she unknowingly raises her voice, angering the man. To test her, he orders her to pleasure herself in front of him, but she refuses. This earns her a slap, and he even opines that René isn't stern about her disobedience. Contrary to his assumption, Wu tells him she never disobeyed René for she loves him. Sir Stephen finds this absurd. Therefore, he makes her realize that obedience doesn't require love, and she must expect it with their arrangement. Following their first session, Sir Stephen tucks her to bed, but before leaving, Wu stops him. She tries to return his cigarette holder, but he urges her to take it, believing it suits her. When he resumes his leave, Wu begs him to keep her disobedience a secret from René. The next day, René visits Wu's workplace and is surprised to see that she's using Sir Stephen's cigarette holder. When she confirms that he gave it to her, René expresses his proudness of Wu and hugs her. At that moment, Jacqueline enters and tells them she shares the same sentiment toward the woman. Then, Jacqueline asks Wu if she's printed her photographs, but she denies it. Because of that, she bids them goodbye, but René stops her, leading the couple to invite her into their circle. For the next few days, Jacqueline often accompanies the couple on their walks, pleasing René. He finds the woman attractive and has an ulterior motive toward her. With this knowledge, Wu feels jealous, but she's more worried about how strong Sir Stephen's control is on her lover. One day, Wu sulks as René becomes passive in their intimate life and relationship. She confronts him for doting more on his brother than her, even accusing him of being in love with Sir Stephen. Despite her words, René deems her assumption nonsensical, angering her. As a result, Wu refuses to attend her session with Sir Stephen. but René declines her wishes. Taking her actions as disobedience, he threatens to inform his brother about this. Later that night, René indeed snitches on her, resulting in U being disciplined. During her punishment, Sir Stephen kisses her for the first time, making her think he is in love with her. Even with the tenderness of the act, Sir Stephen harshly punishes U until she is unconscious. The following afternoon, Sir Stephen learns about U's attraction toward Jacqueline, so he urges her to tell him a story about the woman. Once their order arrives, he changes their topic and informs her about getting marked permanently. With her confusion evident, the man explains that it'll establish his ownership over her. He emphasizes that she has the free will to refuse, but in exchange, she has to leave. Outside the restaurant, Sir Stephen gives U a few days to seduce Jacqueline and convince her to visit Wasi. Initially, she refuses, believing that it'll be impossible, but since he controls her, U accepts it. Happy with her decision, Sir Stephen continues their conversation and reveals that Jacqueline will be conditioned as an offering for René. U can't believe what she's heard, so she asks him if René loves Jacqueline. Sir Stephen confirms but clarifies that it's one-sided. Only René harbors romantic feelings toward Jacqueline. When U remains silent, Sir Stephen orders her to persuade Jacqueline to share her apartment. In compliance with her master's orders, U successfully seduces Jacqueline at work. Things become favorable since Jacqueline eagerly moves in with U, completely smitten with her. Later that night, U invites Jacqueline into her bed, leading them to make love. Because of this, she gains control over the woman, making it easier for her to accomplish Sir Stephen's orders. The next day, Jacqueline tries to seek U's affection, but the woman won't spare her a glance as she's busy on the phone. It turns out Sir Stephen summons her to his house to talk about her progress with Jacqueline. Enthusiastically, U reveals that she has completed his initial orders. As a reward, Sir Stephen makes love to her in his study. Suddenly, his maid, Nora, enters the room, planning to deliver the roses to his room. U feels uncomfortable with her intrusion, so she tries to stop their moment. Still, Sir Stephen doesn't mind their spectator and continues the deed. The following day, the pair visit Anne-Marie's residence after U agrees to acquire Sir Stephen's permanent branding. U consents to bear his branding to show her budding love for him. While she's in her designated room, Anne-Marie introduces her to her housemates. Surprisingly, Andre and Therese are present, the two girls who also attended Wasi. Once the greetings are exchanged, Anne-Marie orders the girls to help U dress. Afterward, she informs U that she'll be whipped later in the evening as her welcoming ceremony. During the ceremony, Yvonne mercilessly whips U, and as her screams get louder, Anne-Marie turns up the record player's volume to mask the sound of her agony. One night, U wakes up from Therese's cries and checks what's transpired. It turns out Yvonne's sleeping with Anne-Marie. Since the headmistress has been a doting owner to Therese, the poor woman struggles to share her with her housemates. To console her, Anne-Marie sends Yvonne and U back to their room. The next morning, Anne-Marie and Claire present her Sir Stephen's ring, which will be attached to her crotch. Anne-Marie explains that it's another way to show that the man owns her, but since it can be filed off, Sir Stephen insists that U must be branded. Moments later, Anne-Marie orders U to whip Yvonne. At first, she refuses, but the headmistress informs her that she must experience it since Sir Stephen wants her to apply it with Jacqueline. Without a choice, U complies. In the evening, U takes her turn in bedding Anne-Marie. Of course, this doesn't sit well with Therese, so she confronts U the next day. Therese asks U about what she did with the headmistress, but she remains silent. Fueled by jealousy, Therese insultingly reveals she'll be branded. On the day of her branding, Anne-Marie reminds her she is allowed to refuse, but U is determined to receive Sir Stephen's mark. With her declaration, the headmistress proceeds to put the heated metal on U's behind, causing her to scream in pain. Such a sight traumatizes Andre, leading her to storm out of the room. Anne-Marie and Therese check on her, but she expresses her desire to leave. Because of her words, the headmistress grants her freedom. Upon returning to her apartment, Jacqueline wonders about U's rings, so the woman recounts her journey in training her submissiveness. Jacqueline marvels at her story, but she opines that she doesn't like Therese. Curious, Jacqueline suggests she visit Wasi, but she plans not to get touched. While at it, Jacqueline professes her love to U by volunteering to sleep with René if she wishes to. U likes her initiative but tells her to wait. One afternoon, U shares a meal with Sir Stephen's associates, the commander and Yvonne. The commander proposes holding a party for U and suggests making her the queen of the night. When Sir Stephen agrees, the commander begins to have his way with her. While they're in the act, Sir Stephen abruptly leaves, reasoning that he has somewhere else to be. On the same day, Yvonne takes U to his hotel and makes love to her. The next morning, U excitedly visits Sir Stephen's residence, but the man's melancholic expression greets her. He admits he's grown attached to her, making U swear her loyalty. Despite her assurance, Sir Stephen remains dejected, so she checks on him. Sir Stephen reveals that Yvonne has fallen in love with her and wishes to free her from his control. Moreover, he plans to marry her, so Sir Stephen reminds her that she's free to leave him and choose someone new. Grimly, he informs her that Yvonne is expected to visit his house later. Wu chastises him for his brash decision and asks him what he'll do to her if Yvonne never comes. As an answer, Sir Stephen takes her to a special room modeled like the whipping chamber from Anne-Marie's place. Wu marvels at the exquisiteness of the room, so she asks him when it was built. Sir Stephen answers that it was built just after her return, but he clarifies that he initially planned never to show it to her, which is his way of punishing her. However, Wu thinks otherwise, believing that Yvonne should be punished. Therefore, she devises that Nora will whip her before Yvonne's arrival. After a while, Yvonne finally arrives at Sir Stephen's residence, and an exhausted Nora welcomes him. Though confused about the maid's appearance, the man quickly ascends the stairs to meet Sir Stephen. Instead of him, Yvonne discovers Wu's peculiar state, evidently punished by whipping. This sight makes him feel ill, causing him to storm out of the house abruptly. A few days after the encounter, Sir Stephen takes Wu, Jacqueline, and René on a holiday trip to Brittany. During her trip, Wu gets into an unexpected reunion with Therese. While the pair are happy about each other's presence, Jacqueline isn't, as she is jealous of their closeness. With her pettiness, Jacqueline tells René that Wu's been talking to the captain, hoping to tarnish her obedient image. Wu tries to debunk her lies, but Jacqueline remains stubborn, leading them to hurt each other physically. Before things worsen, Sir Stephen intervenes and takes Wu inside their lodge. Wu tries to disprove Jacqueline's lies, but he assures her that he believes her, especially since he's with the captain. The captain happily greets Wu and compliments her appearance, but she remains silent. To prevent the awkwardness from happening, Sir Stephen begins to inform her about the party later. After some time, Sir Stephen takes René to a yacht drive and tells him he can have Jacqueline through Wu's persuasion. René worries that Jacqueline might refuse him, but Sir Stephen assures him it won't happen. He firmly believes Jacqueline will be René's while Wu will be his. While at it, he expresses his gratitude for giving Wu to him, and he finally admits that he loves her. While Wu prepares for the party, Jacqueline visits her and apologizes for her childish behavior earlier, admitting that it stemmed from jealousy. Since she's crazy for Wu, she swears to do anything she wants. She yearns to be like Therese, so she insists that she visit Wasi, much in Wu's favor. During the party, the guests surround Wu and stare in awe at her bare physique. Like them, Sir Stephen marvels at her beauty and power. A few days later, Wu takes Jacqueline to Wasi, completing her final task under her master's order. She informs Sir Stephen about it, earning his love. Wu kisses him in return and takes his cigarette. When Wu unknowingly chuckles, Sir Stephen wonders why, so she questions his love for her. She asks him if he'll undergo the trial she's gone through, but the man simply gives her an uncertain answer. Unsatisfied, Wu takes the heated cigarette holder and brands his hand, leaving an O mark.